Welcome back to Facts and Fictions, the Cozy Book Club podcast where we talk about the books we're reading, the thoughts we have on them, and any other stories that come up along the way. My name's Morgan.
My name's Desiree, and this week we are discussing Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. In this book, two brothers, Peter and Ivan Kubek, struggle to navigate their personal and professional lives after the loss of their father, who passed away from cancer. Peter is a successful Dublin lawyer in his early 30s. He's juggling a long-standing love for a woman named Sylvia and a newer relationship with a younger woman named Naomi. Meanwhile, Ivan, his brother, is a 22-year-old chess prodigy embarking on a new relationship with an older woman named Margaret. This novel explores their emotional struggles, relationships, and shifting family dynamics, all while reflecting on love, power, personal identity, and grief. Morgan, what did you think of Intermezzo? What were your initial thoughts?
Getting started with it, it's very character driven, so it takes a while to get into it. So you have to kind of start to care about the characters and their stories. There's not a ton of plot driving it through. So it took, I don't know, maybe like the first 50 pages for me to feel like I'm really going to enjoy this book. It was a slog at first, and then I loved it once I got into it.
I completely agree with you. I recall, we read this a little bit ago, but I recall the first few pages of this book. It took me multiple times I had to restart the book multiple times to feel engaged with it. And Sally's writing style, specifically for Peter, was one that it was kind of a mountain to climb.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a negative way, but you really had to be focused. I feel like this book isn't one that I could pick up when I had 10 minutes of downtime.
Yeah, it's not just like a very lighthearted, easy read.
Yeah.
You kind of got to be in the right headspace.
And speaking of writing style, it was written in multiple perspectives. Did you find that distracting, or did you find it effective?
To be honest, it took me halfway until the book was over to have like the aha moment that like Peter and Ivan had different writing styles to them. And then I really enjoyed it. But so it wasn't distracting to me at all because I was oblivious for the first half of the book. But I do think it was really cool the way she did that once I did finally recognize it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. But it also took me quite a while into the book to, I guess, be able to understand that there were different perspectives and writing styles, and then to kind of lean into that. And
yeah, once I realized that, I kind of backtracked a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, she's been doing this the whole time. But it just went over my head a little bit.
There's so much substance to the book, so I feel like that's probably common.
She develops the characters very well, and sometimes I feel like it's almost harder to read those books at first because it's easy to read a book where you can relate to the characters, but she creates such distinct characters that I don't think they're necessarily relatable. That's how I felt anyhow. Sometimes, and that's also with both protagonists being male, I love reading a book with like a 29-year-old female protagonist, like somebody who I can put myself in their shoes. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel going into it. I like getting the different perspectives. It's just not usually what I'm drawn to. And it did take me a little longer to connect to either of them. Did you find like yourself connecting to one over the other?
Yeah, I feel like there were aspects of Ivan that I connected with. Maybe the part of him that his social tendencies and behavior kind of.
Yeah, I felt very connected to Ivan. I didn't connect to Peter very well at all. I enjoyed his storyline, but if I had to like relate to one or the other, I would say it was Ivan. And I also felt almost like protective of him.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted the best for Ivan. I thought he was like just like a little cutie patootie.
And did you feel that way about Peter? Or I guess what were your thoughts on Peter? Because I feel like there's probably two camps of outlooks on him. Because Peter, he was dating this woman for a long time, and then now he's seeing this very young woman who is financially unstable, and he's supporting her in a way. And there's a lot of interactions with her, like sexual interactions with her, that people, I think some people saw not that he was taking advantage of her, but there was just complexities as far as the hierarchy of those two together.
Yeah.
So did you see Peter as like kind of a just a bad partner, not necessarily bad intentioned, or did you see him as like just a shitty person in general?
I think Naomi, the young woman he was having that relationship with, was well developed enough that I think it seemed like they were using each other. Like neither of them were in it for like a love connection. And there was like the power dynamic with her being so young and him being in his 30s and the financial provider. But I think she was very well aware that she was using him like for money as much as he was using her for like sex and companionship. So I don't think it would have been a different story if like Naomi was like falling in love with him and thought he was the one and like had all these butterflies. But I don't think he was necessarily preying on her the way it could have read if they didn't develop Naomi the way they did.
Well, I think what really, changed my perspective on him was the whole storyline of Sylvia leaving Peter due to that accident, and not because they didn't love each other. Mm-hmm. And there's still so much love there. And I feel like because I think Peter was very well intentioned in that relationship, I think that was a whole other side of him.
Yeah.
It's like what could have been. It makes me wonder what could have been if that wouldn't have happened to Sylvia.
That was such a sad storyline. And I feel like I understood where Sylvia was coming from, but she also took any of his autonomy in that decision away. She decided for him that she couldn't be enough for him, rather than saying, hey, here, like, well, let me lay it on the line. Is this going to be okay? And I feel like not giving him any play in that decision left so much like up in the air for him, where he was like never going to feel satisfied with how that relationship ended.
That time they had together, and he had in his mind made the decision to break it off with Naomi, and then Sylvia later said, "Why would you do that? I didn't want you to do that. We're never going to be what you want us to be." That was, I feel like, so heartbreaking, and yeah, I think that's at that point is why I felt so like heartbroken for Peter as a person. But not that I don't acknowledge that there's bad parts of him and whatever, but I think it all stems from like insecurities.
Yeah, he was just kind of like a sad, lost soul, I think, trying to find fulfillment in whatever way he could, knowing that what he really wanted was never going to happen, which was sad, and that he didn't have any choice in that. She thought it would have been selfish to stay in that relationship, but I feel like it was also selfish not to like collaborate on a decision and see what he was feeling.
Speaking of Sylvia, I wish that we didn't get a perspective from her.
I know. Yeah.
And it kind of makes me wonder why we didn't, because we got that from Margaret. And I want to know more about Sylvia.
I was very nosy about her situation and like her feelings. And I wanted to know if she would have wanted to be with him if she didn't think it was selfish, or if that was kind of like almost a scapegoat too, where she's like, maybe she didn't want to continue that relationship, like an excuse in a way.
And Peter, another thing about Peter that like you said, he's just sad, lost, and whatever. Like, there is no part of his life I feel like that he was happy with.
No.
Like, his brother, he was honestly, like, to me it seemed he's honestly embarrassed of Ivan a lot. He makes these little comments about Ivan to people, like calling him an oddball and calling him kind of autistic. And at the beginning of the book, he comments about how bad his suit looks, and then he's embarrassed of Naomi. He didn't invite her to the funeral because he didn't want to have to explain to people why he's dating such a young girl. And then he's not happy with where he stands with Sylvia. It's like he has nothing. And then he's also dealing with stress from his job. Like, there's nothing good going on. And then he's drowning himself in alcohol. He's drowning himself in tears, pills. He's in the thick of it.
It's like from the outside looking in, people would probably assume he was happy. He's got like this successful like job. He's a lawyer making a lot of money. He's conventionally good looking. And a lot of people, I feel like a lot of men on the outside looking in would see him dating like this young girl and be jealous. I don't know if women would think that was like a mark of something to be proud of, but I'm sure his peers might. But yeah, nothing, despite how the outward appearance, things aren't going really well for him.
I really liked the stream of consciousness or internal monologue of him, though. It really took you, because you really had to focus in on it when you're reading. I feel like in the way Sally Rooney writes in general, I just feel like it allows you to visualize everything so clearly. So even though I mentioned that Peter's parts of the book were, you had to be really intentional about reading them, and they were a mountain to climb, I feel like those sat with me a lot longer.
Yeah, and they really drew me in.
Yeah.
Whereas like I wanted to continue reading his sections. And I felt that same way, just like I guess different about Ivan. I enjoyed Ivan's storyline more. I think I enjoyed Peter's storytelling.
Yes.
So I feel like Ivan's storyline was more so one of hope and like finding what he wanted out of life, whereas Peter's, you didn't really get that, but the way it was told was really nice.
What did you think of Ivan and Margaret's relationship?
It made me sad in some ways, just like knowing that Margaret was so uncomfortable with it. The age gap was significant with Ivan being in his early 20s. I'm not bothered by age gaps. Like if both of them are like fully grown, and I know early 20s is technically like you're an adult, but you're not fully like developed mentally. I don't think she was taking advantage of him, but I don't think it was a comfortable age gap either. And it's hard to put yourself in her shoes because I'm like, if I was single, I couldn't imagine myself going after, was he 21 or 22?
He was 22.
A 22-year-old. And especially, when they meet, they're talking about how young he looks as well. So maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but I do think there was a lot of pureness about their relationship as well. I don't think it was predatory. It just didn't quite sit right either. What did you think about it?
Uncomfortable. I also feel like part of the reason why I felt uncomfortable, not that I, like you said, not that I think that their relationship was inherently wrong, but they were just, like Margaret, is separated from an alcoholic husband, and because of the age gap, doesn't even feel comfortable telling people that she's seeing this young boy or, young adult. He has not experienced life. He has not been through anything close to what she has. And so I just feel like there's that gap of experience that just makes you, I guess, a little bit uncomfortable. But I don't think Margaret had, was preying on him either. But I thought it was interesting to see the flip-flop back and forth of Peter and Naomi's age gap relationship and then Margaret and Ivan's.
Mm-hmm.
Because in comparison, I feel like I was a little bit more comfortable with Naomi and Peter's because as you mentioned, it felt like Naomi was sure of herself and kind of understood the inner workings of their relationship, whereas Ivan, I feel like he just was less experienced of a person in general.
Yeah, Naomi seemed just, despite being like a very similar age, just more mature and more experienced with life and more intentional in what she was doing. Whereas Ivan almost kind of like stumbled into this relationship and seemed very naive and immature is not the word I'm looking for. Youthful, I guess. I don't know. Like he seemed like a boy, where I think the way it's written, Naomi seems very much like a woman.
I almost kind of wish that Margaret and Ivan's relationship would have stayed a friendship. Because I think Margaret is such a kind person and it was good for Ivan. But
I thought it was interesting seeing like Peter's hypocrisy too about the relationship, because he's in his 30s dating a college student, but it's deeply uncomfortable when his 22-year-old brother is dating a woman in her 30s. And honestly, in general, like this is just a very deep generalization, I'm more comfortable with age gap relationships when the woman is older. I feel like that takes some of like the feelings of like, is this predatory or not, away, which this one, in this case, I was more comfortable with Peter and Naomi's, but just casting a wide net there. I did think it was interesting that he couldn't see that he was doing the same thing that he was judging Margaret for.
Now that you said that out loud, I don't know if I agree with that.
Oh, really?
I don't know that I honestly think, because it's so, I mean, I guess I don't even know. Is it like way less common? I would guess so, that when a woman is dating someone much younger than her. But I feel like I feel so uncomfortable with that.
Oh, really?
Maybe that's internalized misogyny.
I don't know.
It may be. But also, have you ever watched the movie or heard of the story called May December?
No, I haven't.
There was a huge scandal. It's based off of a true story. There was a huge scandal of this woman. Forgive me, I don't remember the exact details, but an older woman, and I believe she was a teacher, who, and for some reason I feel like that's what I think of when
teachers.
But she ended up dating her student and then ended up getting pregnant. I believe she got pregnant while on trial or something. There was a movie made about it, and it just came out a couple of years ago, and it might have been a remake, but that movie was, gosh, it was hard-hitting.
I think I know the case you're talking about now, and I think they ended up together after she got out of prison.
Yes, they ended up together, and they ended up having a family.
Wild.
And the movie was really emotional and upsetting. It really, because they had a happy life, in quotations, and then towards the end of the movie you can see him come to a realization of, I just got chills thinking about it. It was a very, you'll have to watch it, but he came to a realization, so late in life after they've had kids and everything, of what happened. And so I don't know, I'm not sure. For some reason I feel like an older woman with a young man is so,
I get that,
but I also feel about
if that's like where your brain's going to, like the teacher-student relationships, that makes so much sense. I feel like in my head, like that dynamic, whenever I've known them, it's just been a woman who just seems too vibrant to be with like a crusty, dusty older man, so then she dates younger. I guess I can
see that.
Yeah, I feel like it's always like the vibrant, exuberant women dating younger, whereas a lot of times it's the men who maybe aren't desired by their peers who end up dating younger.
That's another, I think, really important part, is it's the stage of life in which they get together, I think, because to me, I don't think it's weird at all. I think it gets to be normal once you're out of teens and 20s.
Yeah.
After that, like, age gap doesn't, I think, make much of a difference, because those people have had time to, so this book, obviously, like, a huge part of it is kind of taking a look at those age gap relationships and whatever, and like the stereotypes of age gap relationships. And it's interesting to kind of take a step back and like examine, how do I feel about that?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like so much of it's case by case too. I think it's, from the outside looking in, some people might disagree with this, but I think it's almost easy to see the intentions when you're not in the situation. If you're too close to the people, sometimes it's hard to judge, but I feel like I've got a good radar for that. Like, maybe not. Maybe I'm just like stroking my own ego, but I feel like I can usually tell.
No, I think you're very intuitive.
I hope so. The others, I'm just judging.
No, I think it's less out of judgment, more out of protectiveness.
Yeah, I worry, I guess, a lot about strangers, which is none of my business.
So another part of this book, like, theme is navigating grief. So another main theme of this book is grief and navigating grief. How did you feel about Peter and Ivan's journey navigating the loss of their dad, and the fact that they were dealing with the same loss but had much different experiences?
I'm always interested in reading like about grief and people's journeys with grief. I am somebody who gets paralyzed by grief, so it's interesting to see how people like move on with their lives. I don't think either of them had like great experiences with it, but who does? It is always interesting to see like the different perspectives like two people can have with the same experience.
So personally, I don't deal with grief well, in that I typically am more of like an avoidant person, where I bury it down deep and then eventually blow up. Peter, obviously, he dealt with it really by like self-sabotage. I feel like he's, drinking, doing drugs, internalizing a lot of things. Also, he had suicidal ideation throughout the book as well, which was pretty like hard hitting, I thought. And then there's Ivan, who is 22 and he's thinking that he's wasted his life, and he's literally 22. He's like full of regret on how he spent his time, but he's less, I think, destructive. So I feel like Ivan handled it a little bit better than Peter did. But it was interesting to see because I think they both, I think, were yearning for each other, but didn't really, they kind of got there in the end. But throughout the book, they didn't. They were just kind of parallel.
Yeah.
It was sad because they're going through the same thing, and they could have really used each other to lean on, and they blew up at each other.
Like, I'm thinking, like, my family just, like, recently experienced loss. And the first thing I did was, like, text my brother and I think like him over. And, like, that brought me a lot of peace. Like, full disclosure, I wanted to play with this kid more so than I wanted to see him. But we did also, like, talk and, like, share memories and stuff. That was, like, my first thought. Like, I should text my brother. And I was over there within, I don't know, an hour. And it just, I feel like if you have a sibling that you can't lean on that way, that's, like, so sad. And I know that's, like, the reality for so many people, especially once you reach adulthood. Siblings stop being close oftentimes. It is sad to read about, especially as somebody I really value, the relationship I have with my brother. And reading about theirs, like, the contrast there, it's like I can't even imagine, like, how I would have felt experiencing anything, like, any very extreme high or low without having my brother available, like, emotionally to me.
Especially a parent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was their dad, which I think another part of it was they both had resentment toward each other because Peter was resentful that Ivan was close with their dad, closer. And then Ivan was resentful because Peter wasn't, but yet Peter took kind of control of, for example, Peter was the one who delivered the eulogy when in reality Ivan wished he had, but because Peter's more of an outgoing, he's a lawyer and can talk and, knows what people expect of him, kind of took that on. And so I feel like from the very beginning, the immediate place they leaned it in was just resentment of each other.
Mm-hmm. I have seen that so many times, like with the death of a family member. I feel like in some families it brings people together, and in other families it explodes.
Exactly.
Which is crazy and scary.
I think it's actually very common. I'm not sure what the statistics are on that. But it's very common that a matriarch or father passes away and blows up the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times is a journey back to connection.
No,
like the end.
Family becomes strangers,
Mm-hmm.
which is so weird.
I love reading about grief, but I also love reading about just people. I think that's why I just love literary fiction so much. I love reading about people and like the inner, like that's why I think I love specifically Sally Rooney. She like inputs the thoughts of these people onto the pages so well that you do feel like you're in their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love like learning about people or experiencing other people's thoughts. I want to get into your brain. I want to get into
to bring my journal over.
Yeah. I love it so much. And I feel like because we're in a point in the world where what we see of people is less, I don't want to say less real because it's like, I just feel like that's such a cliche, but less vulnerable. Mm-hmm. I just feel like we are seeing less and less of what makes us truly human. And I don't know. I feel like, and I understand people are, because I definitely am not one to like put myself out there, especially with people who maybe aren't going to be reciprocating that, because I feel like you're more likely to be vulnerable with someone who is vulnerable with you. But I feel like that's really what connects us.
Yeah.
And so I feel like reading these types of books is therapeutic and something I really enjoy because I just don't think we get enough of that anymore.
No, I agree with that completely. I used to think I didn't like literary fiction because they're usually harder books to get into because you have to like take that time to connect. But I think I was just being lazy. Whereas like I wanted something to enthrall me immediately. But once I got past that, I do think it's one of my favorite genres to read. It is heavier and you have to be like in the right mood for it. But they are the ones that leave me thinking after I finish the book, where like a lot of the more lighthearted, like frilly books I read aren't that way.
Yeah. And I definitely probably couldn't be someone who reads only literary fiction. Because I think you need a reprieve from it. But I agree. They take more of our attention, but maybe that's what we need.
It's what I need. My attention span is shot, which I feel like it's gotten better maybe over the last 6 months, but it's still not where it needs to be.
What do you think Sally Rooney is like in person? Like, do you think she's like, do you think she's a super vulnerable, open person with people? Because I feel like she would have to be able to write so well about like these inner workings of someone's brain.
Or she might be like one of those people who just like embodies comfort and people feel comfortable opening up to. Like if she's like a very just active listener and like asks the right questions. I could see her being like a people watcher, just like somebody who goes to a coffee shop and stays for 2 hours and like just enjoys her own company and observes the world around her. I feel like she has to be like both introspective but also very extrospective too, because like especially with this book, I don't think she's like either Peter or Ivan, but she wrote the book so well. Maybe she is. I don't know. But I don't imagine her like finding either of them like relatable to her own experience.
Yeah. I wonder though. Or what people who know her well would say about her or describe her as.
That would be interesting. I love hearing like people describe people that they know.
Me too.
I think that's so interesting. It's more interesting than hearing somebody describe themselves. Because I feel like in some ways, like you know yourself more than anyone else, but you also don't know how you're perceived.
I hate that too.
When I started my blog back when I was in college, I had my friends write the About Me section for me, and then I never published that because Jared called me manipulative.
I don't think you're manipulative.
I think that caused some introspection for myself. I do see how he would have thought at that stage of my life. I was 18 at that point. How maybe I was a little more manipulative in my teenage years. I was just very good at making people think something was their idea, which I still think I am. I don't do it as often.
I'm actually crying right now.
I'm always so scared that like I'm not coming off in the world the way I want to be. I think I've told you this. I get comments fairly often on my TikToks when I'm doing like consultations and somebody says, "Oh, we want like a biblical name." And I'll say like, "I'm not religious." So like take this with a grain of salt. So many people are like, "Whoa, I thought you were like fundy."
I thought you were what?
Like a fundamentalist. I was like, what? And I think maybe it's my voice and the long hair.
Actually, now that I'm looking at you, now that I'm looking at you, like right now, you look kind of religious.
I don't have a problem with religion. I have a problem with some of the stereotypes that people might assume are true of me based on their assumption that I'm religious.
Absolutely. Preach.
That's right.
No, like right now in this actual moment, I looked over at you with a clear vision, and I can understand them. I don't know why you're so pure looking. The high neck sweater with the long beautiful hair and the you do look a little like
Christian girl.
Yeah. But I wouldn't change anything about you. I don't know how you can make yourself look less fundy. I don't think it's anything that you could change.
Just who I am.
But I think like your general demeanor is just like, see, that's the thing. Why are we equating? Actually, this is a me problem because why am I equating like a pure look to being religious? That's not a you problem. That's a person who's perceiving you problem. I wanted to talk about like the name of the book, Intermezzo, because I love the name of the book. And I just feel like nobody even mentioned. I don't even know if a lot of people like. Did you know the word intermezzo?
Not before I read it.
No, me either. I looked it up. But I don't think a lot of people do. I think it's just like Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. Cool.
Yeah.
But it's a brilliant name of the book. A brilliant title because it's there's a few different definitions, but the one I would assume Sally picked it for is Intermezzo is a brief interlude or diversion. And I think that's a great name for the book because they just experience this huge loss in their life, and it's truly a transition into a new life without their dad. And I love that.
So sad. I love that too.
I love words, but I love this word. Now, if Sally Rooney were to write a sequel or a follow-up, which character story would you want her to revisit or dive deeper into?
Probably Ivan's, just 'cause I felt like his felt more hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, I want to see everything work out with Peter too, but I connected more to Ivan. I found him more likable. I'd love to see what is next for him. I feel like he's like at that fun age where he's really discovering himself. And I think that would be fun.
Do you think Margaret and him stay together?
No, I don't. And like I feel like it's gonna be really sad for them, but I feel like it's for the best. I think there's a better partner out there for each of them, and I think they're gonna take what they needed from this relationship and be able to like move forward. I could see them staying, like not friends. I feel like that is like a heavy word for, or too strong of a word for what I could see them staying, but like cordial, friendly.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see them stay together. I don't think either. I think Ivan needs more time to be a 22-year-old.
I want more for Margaret. I want her to find a more compatible person, someone who she could, really lean on. I don't feel like Ivan's in that place in his life, and I feel like that is mainly due to his age.
Yeah, I agree. I think he needs to find somebody more like him in a lot of ways, mainly in like the age range. That's like the one bad thing about like literary fiction is you don't get the happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's nice to read a book with a happy ending, no matter how unrealistic it is. Yeah, because like I'm thinking about like their paths. I don't think anything's wrapped up with a bow for either of them in the near future. I think there's gonna be a lot more hurt, navigating difficult things, and making a lot of mistakes.
So, let's talk about the end of the book. So, Ivan had entered into this competition for chess, and it was kind of a big deal. He was seeking to win, and there was, I think, critical acclaim for whatever the winner. But prior to this, he and Peter had been into a really big blow-up fight that happened at their dad's house prior to, and they were not on talking terms. And so Ivan is at this chess tournament, and Peter shows up to it, and he stays out in the hall and waits. He doesn't want to cause a ruckus there. And at the end of the book, Ivan and Peter are talking after Ivan wins, and Ivan invites Peter over for Thanksgiving, or was it Christmas? Invites him over to, he asks him if he'd like to join Margaret and Ivan for the holidays. And it was kind of this olive branch to Peter. So how did you feel about, because that was kind of the ending of the book.
I hope that's like a start of them healing. I feel like it's unrealistic to think it's going to fix everything, but I think seeing him put in the effort is a good indicator that he's willing to put in the work. If his brother is, and I think he would be. Family dynamics are so hard to read about. It's like you want everything just like wrapped up so nicely, but I think they're such different people. It's going to be hard for them to like, it's not going to be smooth sailing for forever. I think they just need to learn how to navigate the hard times better, which I think that's going to come with time too.
Yeah. And I think I do think that they're on their way to overcoming the resentment they feel towards each other. For example, like Peter was cheering up when Ivan was inviting him over. So I feel like it was a really big moment. So I do think that they're on their way, and I hope they can find their way because they're really all they have. Their mom is not there for them emotionally after this happened. Yeah. And that was really hard to see. So I feel like that even made it more like apparent that they really need each other as brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mom definitely I feel like this happens a lot when like parents are divorced. They just want to throw completely the other side away, like not thinking about the impact things are having on the kids. So because she was done with her ex-husband, she wanted nothing to do with navigating her sons, like albeit they were adults, but still she didn't want to help them navigate that trauma. It's like I feel like it's a mom's job to do that, kind of, no matter how old your kids are.
It makes me very upset.
Same.
Like very upset. Because I agree with you. I think that it is her responsibility, and she should feel obligated to, at a minimum, try to open up a conversation about what they're going through, because clearly they're both going through a lot, and she seems to have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
Not only that, she has no fucking clue, but then she's tasked with one simple thing following the death of their dad, which is take care of the dog that Ivan cares about a lot. Can't even do that.
Yeah, I remember, so like Ivan showed up and the bowl was completely dry. And that made me so sad, like thinking about my dog and how sad that would make her.
And the fact Ivan was very upset, and he did leave, like, he made it clear that he was mad. But I think I would have, if I was Ivan, I don't think I would have been able to, like, leave without a literal blowout fight. Like, I like, there's no reason to not care for an animal that cannot care for itself.
Especially knowing what that animal means to your son.
The mom is the real villain of the story.
Yeah, she really is. I feel like some people treat having kids like just like a hobby they're picking up, and not like this lifelong commitment that they need to be sure that they're equipped to handle. I hate like when you see like the stories where like children become adults and then the parents just disengage. I don't feel like that's the way it should be.
No.
But it is for so many people.
I'm getting upset.
Same.
Every book we read, we do a fan cast, and it's purely vibes.
Purely vibes. So if there was like a specific physical description, sometimes we'll just word that to fit the vibes.
Absolutely. This is our show. Peter?
I put Theo James.
I love that. I feel like he really is a good Peter.
So Peter vibe.
Yeah. An overarching theme in all of my picks. I did try to do all Irish actors and actresses, just simply because Sally Rooney's an Irish author, and so I kind of took that as an opportunity to narrow in my pool of actors. So for Peter, I picked Jamie Dornan.
Brilliant. I love how you did that.
That was such a good idea. Thank you. It's kind of overwhelming to look for fan casts sometimes because there's so many actors and actresses to choose from.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially the book set like mostly in Dublin. Yes, it's like if they did make it to a movie.
Ivan?
I had Dominic Sessa from The Holdovers.
It's one of my favorite movies.
It's such a good movie.
It is such a good movie. If you have not watched The Holdovers, you need to watch it. It's a classic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I did Paul Mescal for Ivan.
Oh,
I just love him.
Yeah, so that's perfect. Alexandra Daddario.
Ooh,
I love her.
I love her too. I did Carrie Condon. And we'll throw out photos too. Sylvia?
I had Diana Agron.
The only time I see anything about Diana Agron, I never watched Glee, by the way.
Oh, really?
No. But the only time I ever see anything about Diana Agron is all of the Taylor Swift. She's gorgeous.
Yeah, she is.
Sylvia, I did Saoirse Ronan. How do you say her name? Saoirse Ronan.
The Irish names are also tricky.
Yeah. And I love her. I just picture her as Sylvia. I feel like she'd be a really good Sylvia.
And that's perfect.
Did you do just Naomi?
Yep.
Okay. Naomi?
I had Jenna Ortega.
Ooh. I did Lucy Bunyan. She's a cute little, I'm not sure if she's Irish, but she's somewhere up there. I really love this book, and this is honestly a book that I could see myself rereading down the line.
I was thinking that too. Like, I probably wouldn't for another few years, but it is what I'll pick up again one day.
Agree. And it's just a beautiful book. This is the Barnes & Noble exclusive, but her other covers were gorgeous as well. The UK version was kind of the color of Morgan's shirt that she's wearing, this cobalt blue, and it was a gorgeous illustration on the cover of it. So this is a highly recommend, I think, from both of us.
Definitely.
And don't start it and then quit it after 20 pages. This is one that it's probably going to take like 50 pages to really feel invested in.
I agree. It's worth it. Got to give yourself the time to kind of care about the characters.
Yep. Yes, but Sally Rooney, the millennial author, does it again, in my opinion.
Filled it. Another good thought-provoking book, if you want to keep up with us. Next episode we'll be talking about Remarkably Bright Creatures. Lots of similar overlapping themes with like just relationship dynamics, grief. Different story, but I think if you enjoyed this one, you'll enjoy that one.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll be back chatting about that soon. Bye. Thanks.